Okay, thanks for joining us once again on the channel. Continuing our previous series, and I believe we're going to start doing this on a weekly basis, starting from where we left off, and then covering from there on read-throughs of the Pathfinder Companions and Player Guides, which we've already covered. Rise of the Ruin Lords and Curse of the Crimson Throne, as well as a very long time ago, which we may do again, the Reign of Winter Adventure Path. But the next one in line here is Second Darkness with Legacy of Fire, hopefully coming next week. And so yeah, I just want to jump in. I'm going to try to do a little bit more of the chaptering, which is now available on YouTube, so that you can kind of go through the different parts of this, which we'll look through as so you can see to the side, the introduction, the actual player's guide, and then we'll read through some of the additional things that are given to us from the Pathfinder Companion for the Second Darkness Adventure Path. Scrolling down, we do see a small map of the report. If you don't have one for the game, refer to the Player's Companion here, which will pretty easily be pulled off as just a PDF image, or use your snip tool to copy that off and then put it in your map maker. I like to use Incarnate, but realistically you could just take this and paste it right into Roll20 or the other one, which the name I'm really forgetting at the moment. Starts with a V, I feel like. Anyway, I use Roll20 with the everything unlocked. But looking here and beginning in, we see the table of contents, which we just looked at over there on the side. And so we'll begin with the introduction. Now, they actually do a direct note here to the reader, which is us and you, because in the history of Pathfinder, Legacy of Fire and Second Darkness were actually much like Curse of the Crimson Throne and Rise of the Ruin Lords were not originally created for the Pathfinder system. It's not until after these four that we get content created specifically for the system, but these were actually made as companions or storylines for the 3.5 system, and then they were adapted here. And if I'm wrong about that, tell me in the comments, but that's my understanding. So, it says, hello, goodbye. Welcome, gentle reader. As you've undoubtedly noticed, this product is not like the player's guides we publish for the Rise of the Ruin Lords or Curse of the Crimson Throne. With this, the Second Darkness Pathfinder Companion, we not only launch a new adventure path, but we also launch a whole new product line, Pathfinder Companion. Each bi-monthly Pathfinder Companion focuses on a particular topic tied to Glorian or the Pathfinder Chronicles campaign setting, and comes out on a month opposite Pathfinder modules. A Pathfinder Companion is made up of 3 sections: an examination of the main topic in roughly 10 pages, a close look at some location important to the topic at hand, in the case of companions that focus on a location, this will be a city or other specific place within the covered area, and 5 short treatments offering new rule elements to use for the topic, a prominent NPC, and 4 based on classic character archetypes. Every third Pathfinder Companion acts as a player's guide to an adventure path launching that same month. If you don't play in that particular adventure path, though, you're sure to find something useful, just as with every companion. The Pathfinder Companion comes out of multiple requests from among our readers to provide more player-friendly information. With the adventure path products and modules, we definitely had the GMs and our audience covered. Our Pathfinder Chronicles line does a good job of presenting information for both GMs and players, but in most of those products, there are sections that could spoil certain plot lines for players. Not so with the Pathfinder Companion. Nothing in here or future companions should spoil any surprise for players, making these products 100% safe for GMs to share with their groups. That isn't to say there's nothing here for GMs, though. On the contrary, since everything available to players is also available to game masters, every Pathfinder companion presents 32 pages of information you as the GM can use to make your campaigns even more immersive. Be guided, ye players. For this particular Pathfinder companion, the topic at hand is the Second Darkness Adventure Path. This is the companion we introduced, a structured and expansive trait section. We first introduced traits in the Curse of the Crimson Throne's player guide, but with this player's guide we set out more defined rules and much greater variety. Originally conceived by James Jacobs, I had an opportunity to work from his excellent ideas to build the framework of the trait system for the Pathfinder Chronicles campaign setting, which also releases this month. As you can tell, this is very old, and some of these things aren't even referred to this anymore. When the system got cut from that book for space concerns, we decided to add it to the player's guides. We hope you like the new trait system because you're likely to see a lot of it. It is our intent to add new traits to the system in every Pathfinder companion, expanding your options every 2 months. Because of Second Darkness, Adventure Path begins at the Hive of Scholars in Villainly, known as Riddleport. This companion location piece examines the unique city of Ciphers on Valeria's northwestern coast. Following the Riddleport section comes 5 discussions full of useful mechanics from Amber Scott, including a Second Darkness-themed prestige class, spells for Riddleport Cypher mages, a look at worshippers of Kate and Kalian, and magic items useful in exploring underground realms. Then, closing out the section, comes the NPC Lavender Lil, a local infamous worker of the oldest profession, intimately tied into the waning Venkaskarskin fortune. Hopefully, all this will prepare your characters for what's coming up in Second Darkness. Fare thee well, my friends. In 4.5 years working at Paizo, I've only taken the opportunity to directly address you, our gentle readers, best in the world, twice. Once in the Pathfinder Chronicles campaign setting, hardcover, and once here. By a strange series of coincidences and not-so-coincidences, both of these forwards come out in the same month, and both of them represent the end of my stint at Paizo Publishing. I started in November 2003 as an assistant editor on our beloved and missed Dragon magazine. Wesley Snyder and I started at the same time. Together we shepherded Dragon for 44 issues, from Spy-filled 316 to the nostalgic 359. With the end of the Dragon and Dungeons print incarnation and the rise of Pathfinder, West and I stopped working on the same team. He went to work at Pathfinder Adventure Paths, and I became the editor of, well, everything. For a while, everything at Paizo went past my eyes, making me quite knowledgeable about Galorian and Pathfinder Chronicles campaign setting continuity. For that reason, as well as my organizational skills, I was blessed with the lead position in the campaign setting hardcover, and with launching this whole new line of products. As of writing this, I've assigned the next 2 companions to some excellent writers. Pathfinder companions Elves, coming out in a couple of months, will be written by industry veteran Jeff Quick and frequent Dragon contributor and RPG superstar, top 16 finisher, Hal McLean. The third companion, set in wondrous Osirian, comes from the fertile imaginations of designers Todd Stewart and RPG superstar top 4 finisher Jason Nelson. My favorite part of this job is working with the writers, some of whom have been in the industry since the heady days of first edition in the late 70s. It has also been my great pleasure to help novices become recognized names in the industry, aiding in the career of several reliable and talented writers. When I announced my resignation, I feared Paizo might not be able to find a replacement with the varied yet narrow skill set I have developed in the past 4.5 years that James, Wes, Jason, and Sutter would have to train a proofreader to become an editor. Despair not, my friends, for Paizo once again worked its magic to not only replace me, but find an upgrade. My replacement in the Pathfinder Chronicles and Pathfinder Companions lines is himself a master of gaming lore and all-around nice guy. I speak here of Sean K. Reynolds, who, as it turns out, helped me land my first freelance gig in the D20 industry that ultimately landed me my job at Paizo. So this is the last and first forward I'll be writing to you. I promise you're going to like what you'll see from these products in the future. Lest you fear, this is the last you'll hear from me. Take heart. I plan to continue writing for Paizo as a freelancer, for as long as they want to give me projects to work on. Now, I just need to get Sean to assign me a companion once in a while. Thanks for many great years. Mike McCarter, editor, Pathfinder Companion. Well, my first time actually reading anything from Mike, because some of these older Pathfinder adventure paths I've actually never played, including this one. So, while we hardly knew you, Mike, and you have long since been gone since this article in August of 2008, and now we find ourselves in June of 2022. Thank you for your work. As such, we begin into the Player's Guide. Aptly named, Second Darkness Player's Guide. A foul omen looms in the sky over the scoundrel city of Riddleport, an ominous shadow that defies the light. Is it a curse laid millennia ago by forgotten mages? Does it forewarn against the return of some terrible foe? Or does it portend to a terrible new era, a second age of darkness? Welcome to the Second Darkness Adventure Path. How fortuitous. This campaign will take your character from the pirate's haven of Riddleport to lands unknown, far across, and deep below the continent of Avestan. What follows is everything you'll need to make a character specifically suited to the challenges and trials that await, and new rules to give you the edge you'll need in combat the dark. Also within lies a description of Riddleport, the city of Ciphers, meant to familiarize you with the campaign's starting city, and quite possibly your character's new home. Everything you need to survive in the coming danger lies before you, so read closely, choose wisely, and prepare for the darkness. For races, humans dominate the majority of the cities along the Varisian's coast, and Riddleport proves no different. Yet, in this den of outcasts and brigands, races rarely seen among the civilized lands of the south, such as half-elves, half-orcs, and tieflings, gather in significantly greater numbers. Dwarf, elf, halfling, or human, the residents of Riddleport hold few qualms over whom or what they're willing to exploit. Humans. As the dominant race in Riddleport, humans can be found occupying almost every occupation in the city of Ciphers, including the most of the positions of power and influence. Although Chilexians and settled Varisians make up a majority of Riddleport's population, representatives of nearly every ethnicity in Avestan and Garund find their way to the pirate port. Kelishite and Gurundi traders sail their ships, their sharp-sailed vessels, beneath the arc of the Cipher Gate, bringing with them the exotic garb, art, and weapons of their people. Proud Ulfin warriors from the land of the Norm Kings regularly make grudging stops in Riddleport, trade the wares of their homeland as spoils of raids in the city's markets. Traders, pirates, and privateers of Chelish and Taldan descent compete on the open seas, eager to steal the greatest riches back from the ports of their homeland. Many of Varisia's natives also find their way to the Riddleport. Among them, wandering Varisian delight in the city of wild spirit and exotic sights, making the city a favored spot even over Magnamar and Corvosa to the south. The criminal Scarnzi, families and gangs of Varisian thieves, particularly relish Riddleport's anything-goes, lawless atmosphere, and take every opportunity to bilk foreign travelers for their gold. Even the occasional Shoanti makes his way to the city of Ciphers, while the seafaring barbarians of the Shadqua occupy the cliffs and sea valves of the nearby Kalfiaks. They have few dealings with Riddleport's unruly populace, seeing them, rightly so, as untrustworthy and dishonorable. Occasionally, members of the Sri Kuri Kwa journey to the outskirts of the city to trade their famously well-bred horses, but rarely travel within the city's walls. Those Shoanti seen within the city are typically outcasts and dishonored warriors seeking a new life in their shame, and often become laborers, brawlers, or pit fighters. Aside from controlling Riddleport's criminal enterprises, humans make up a majority of the city's scholars and clergy. The increasingly influential Order of Cyphers, the academics of the windward districts, are filled with both native-born and well-traveled intellectuals seeking to unravel the mysteries of Oricia's ancient past. The city's several temples also support primarily human clergy and congregations, although locally, several Tieflings extol Calistria's tenets, and Caden follow in it particular. Caden following is particularly diverse. Moving on from the most common race in all of RPGs, we see Dwarves. Many of the Dwarves of Janderhof find Riddleport a lawless place unfit for proper business and devoid of interest in true craftsmanship, and they're not wrong. The promise of profit often overshadows such scruples, though. Founded wholly by a faceless consortium of investors from Janderhof, Riddleport's gas forges employs a sizable number of dwarves, either as miners in the deadly underground carboxyne mines or as smiths in the complex forges above. Aside from those dwarves committed or crazy enough to sacrifice years of their lives working among the poisonous forges, opportunistic dwarves sometimes migrate to the city. These usually adventurous dwarves often hope to make names and fortunes for themselves by bringing a degree of much-lacked skilled labor to the city, or simply to turn a profit selling dwarven goods to travelers from afar. Those with no interest or skill in mining or trading find Riddleport's air of constant change, danger, and wild opportunity a liberating change from the stifling dwarven conditions. Elves. With little interest in so uncouth and dangerous a community, especially one so nearby the splendor of the Mariani Forest, elves rarely deign to walk the streets of Riddleport. While on rare occasion a lone Mariani hunter or a desperate elven trader might find himself forced to take shelter among the city's vagrants and thieves, such visits prove rare. Mariani criminals, outcasts forced to flee the wooded homeland, and those afflicted with dangerous wanderlust appears lightly more frequently. Similarly, individuals from the far-off lands are just as likely to make their way to Riddleport as those from nearby forests. Thus, although still uncommon, wild elves from the Mangui Expanse, and even the aloof elves of Kyonin, are not unknown. Gnomes. Some daring gnomes eke out a dangerous life for themselves in Riddleport. Freedom-loving folk, typically possessing no notion of humanity's concepts of morality. Many make profitable livings working as alchemists or druggists for any of the city's criminal factions. With their love of change and new experiences, gnomes delight in wandering the docks and markets of Riddleports, as foreign ships bring an endless pageant of exotic sights, sounds, and smells to their very doors. Some also make filthy living playing the muck of the Velashu River, unknowing but always eager to discover what or whom they might turn up amid the slime. Halflings. Wily gamblers and skilled sailors, and deft thieves, halflings find great opportunity in Riddleport's pervasive criminal underworld. As in Corvosa to the south, many halflings take work upon the sea, their size and nimbleness making them especially well suited to the life of a sailing vessel. Yet, for all the short folk skills, thieves of other race typically look down on their diminutive peers, and slurs regarding their scrawny slips are bandied about frequently. Many halflings take such prejudices as motivations to excel, and they avenge themselves by outdoing their oversized competition. A few more enlightened or greedy crime bosses care little for the size of those in their employ, and especially when they when it comes to getting the job done. Now we move on to our more exotic heritages for this time. Back in 2008, we were missing a lot of the races that we have now. So, I still think when I think of some interesting races to play here, I would almost think like playing a goblin. With what just happened, Rise of the Ruin Lords to the south, it might be a little weird, but if your DM's okay with it, might be cool. Or playing something like a Ragaru, or I feel like I see too many Kitsune, so maybe not one of those, but there's a lot of cool races, just not maybe not in Azamir, which are played way too much, but there's a lot of cool races to take advantage of, and like the book said, all walks of life to eventually congregate here. But let's move on to half-elves. Many of Oricia's half-elves naturally migrate to Riddleport, finding few who care about their parentage among the city's jaded populace, quick thinkers, deft talkers, and able workers. Half-elves find great opportunity among the city's sailors, gamblers, merchants, and criminals. Yet aside from more provincial occupations, Riddleport offers half-elves a chance at respectability, such as they rarely find in other lands, whether as business managers, ship's captains, or particularly among the city's guards. Gendarmes? I don't know what that is. Gendarmes. Their keen wit and free spirit also attract the Order of Cyphers and the worship of unruly deities of Callistra and Caden Kalian. On to half-orcs. Realistically, half-orcs are my favorite race to play. There's always a lot you can do with their backgrounds, because it's just such kind of an unfortunate thing. Usually not coming from a happy home. The half-orcs, which gives you less things to be attached to, but more reason to prove yourself. And there's a lot. I've had a lot of cool characters. Some of my favorite characters: Balfir, a half-orc investigator, or I had a pirate half-orc once. I forget what his name was, but he was basically the great-great-grandson of Bluebeard for the Skull and Shackles adventure path, and he was quite a cool character as well. But yeah, I do tend to make half-orcs quite a bit on accident. Clovis Gargavan was a half-orc blood rager that I made for a Rise of the Ruin Lords adventure path, in fact. But half-orcs, although unlikely to find acceptance even in the city of outcasts and scoundrels, half-orcs embracing their human parentage found Riddleport the most tolerant of Aricia cities. The greed and ambition that drives so many ventures in the pirate port blinds many employers to the specifics of one's race, and that natural brawn and ferocity of half-orcs make them coveted bodyguards, bouncers, and brawlers. Aside from those who would make their living as professional knee-breakers or combatants in Zincher's arena, some half-orcs enjoy almost human life, taking on everyday jobs often denied them in other lands, or shipping out to sea either pirates or legitimate traders, enjoying the goddess's fickle and savagery. More than one half-orc also dons the hemp vest of Besmara, goddess of pirates, strife, and sea monster. And then the last, another tragic offspring of one not so willing often. Tieflings. Enigmatic and fearful, a small number of Tieflings make their home in Riddleport, although a few of the fiend-blooded race can hope to disguise their heritage. Even among the port's exotic crowds, the city scholars and underhanded nature appeals to many. Taking criminal ventures with ease, Tieflings participate in a wide variety of illicit plots, from thieving to merely lending their intimidating presences to unlawful proceedings. Like other half-bloods, Tieflings come to Riddleport seeking freedom from society that scorns and fears them. Others come to the city trying to escape their own fiendish heritage, hoping to blaze new paths in the service of foreign deities. among the crew of far-ranging ships or as masters of their own destiny. I am the captain of my soul. I am the master of my fate. Classes. So, we've gone through races. Here we find some information on what classes we expect to see here in Riddleport. Beginning, of course, with our intro line, but then barbarians. Alphabetically. As travelers from all walks of life flock to Riddleport, those of numerous professions and with countless skills flourish in the city of Ciphers. While Varisia's more civilized south shuns those of more exotic or eccentric vocations, Riddleport's residents covet and cultivate any skills that might help turn a profit. As the northernmost humans dominate the settlement in Varisia, Riddleport often receives visits from two wildly different but equally volatile barbarian people. Within the nearby Sulphaic Mountains and Churchain Hills, live two groups of the land native Shoanti, the Shadekwa and the Shrikiri-Kwa, respectively. Aloof, proud, honor-obsessed people, the Shadekwa live off the crashing waves and jagged cliffs of the Varisian coast, where they see themselves as defenders of their homeland seas. They distrust non-Shoanti and outsiders, attacking most on sight. The more sociable, but no less proud Shoanti of the Skirkiri-Kwa cultivate a spiritual connection with the animals of their homeland, especially the horses that carry them in their nomadic travels. They occasionally trade with foreigners of the coast. It's not uncommon to see tattooed Shoanti disenchanted with the ways of their people, attempting to start new lives in the cities of Ciphers. See Pathfinder number 10 for full details on the Shoanti. Aside from the Varisian natives, skilled and feared elfin seafarers from the land of the Norm Kings sometimes venture to Riddleport, typically to sell and trade goods raided from any number of coastal communities. Quick to anger, but also quick to laugh, brag, and drink. The elfin are better understood and liked in Riddleport than the local Shoanti, despite their non-infrequent attacks on Riddleport ships. As merchants and travelers from all over Avestan and Garund venture to the city of Ciphers, strange beliefs and barbarian cultures from across these lands trickle into the port. Thus, it's not uncommon to see wanderers from the northern Garundi deserts, savage Kelids from Numaria, or even stoic tribemen from the Mongwe expanse packing through or seeking work. So basically, if you want to be a barbarian, probably being, if you're going to be a human, a Shoanti or an elfin would make the most sense. For any other race, you could pretty easily come from Garundi deserts, from Numaria and the Kelids, or from the Mongwe expanse. I think the Kelids is actually another race of humans, though. But, yeah, I think, like, being a Regarer from the Mongwe expanse would be quite a, thematically okay thing to do. Or a full-blooded orc from Numaria, or even the Mongwe expanse. Yeah, some of those things that we can play now that you couldn't play at the time. Could be cool. In fact, if you're coming from Numaria and you're allowed to, you could even play an android. Who knows? Bards. Along with the ravenous appetites for gold and alcohol, Riddleport has an insatiable need for entertainers. With the city's numerous bars, inns, gaming halls, brothels, restaurants, clubs, and other venues, the talent of skilled performers are constantly in demand. Wandering songsmiths, local instrumentalists, exotic dancers, traveling poets, long-winded scops, and entertainers from 100 different cities and courts throughout the world demand high coin for their coveted services. Riddleport's crowds are fickle, though, and one day's star is the next day's hack. Though conversely, yesterday's courtesan has a fair chance of being tomorrow's starlet. Thus, competition among entertainers proves fierce in the city of Ciphers. with performers knowing that, in many venues, a poor show might cost them much more than just their jobs. Riddleport's audiences being notoriously physical in their disapproval. Unsurprisingly, especially through the Wharf District, rowdy pub patrons demand bawdy tunes and clever sea shanties in endless supply, an art form adopted by several foul-mouthed artists. Clerics. Faith is fickle in Riddleport, a city that places its reverence in luck, trickery, debauchery, and the sea. Most of the city's residents find it wiser to place their faith in their own cunning and hard work than in capricious deities. But one also can't enter a local gambling den without hearing praises to Desna's, Caden Kalian's, or Callistria's name. Despite the inconsistency of their flocks, Caden Kalian and Callistria have both have well-attended temples in the city of Ciphers. A fact that likely has less to do with their faith and more with the former being a bolsterous tavern and latter a brothel. These two temples, the Publican's House and the House of Silken Veil, respectively, both support priests and reach out to the communities at large. The Church of the Goddess Besmara, a lesser deity revered by pirates and seafarers, also keeps a small local temple where sailors and privateers make blood offerings in exchange for placid seas and rich halls. Aside from these well-rooted faiths, several priests of the goddess Desna and Gazre tend to small congregations throughout the city, praying for fortune and fair weather in their followers' dealings within the land and sea. Especially along the docks, the faithful of dozens of other deities wander the city, some simply bringing their gods with them as they travel, others seeking to proselytize in a new land. As the resident faiths tend to be accepting or uncaring regarding other beliefs, Riddleport proves quite open to foreign dogmas, so long as they don't interfere with business. Which is interesting. There's a lot you can probably do with clerics, like, especially if you're bringing an interesting outside deity that you wouldn't normally think of or expect. Maybe an elemental lord or something. Could be a cool thing to do as a cleric or a shaman or, an oracle or a battle priest. There's all kinds of things you could do. An inquisitor. Druids. And I would say, with all of these, as you think of them, so, with bards or barbarians, think also of skalds. With clerics, think of all the things I just mentioned. Druids, you can think also of rangers and shifters, which actually rangers might be included in here. Yeah, they will be. But hunters, the ranger druid baby. Probably, I would almost more closely associate witches with druids than with wizards or sorcerers. But when you think of hearing these descriptions, I would conclude these similar things that you think of when we think of those classes. So, druids. With the city's reliance on the sea, Druids are more welcomed in Riddleport than most other urban centers. Although the city as a whole cares little for its environment, as evidenced by the disgusting state of the Lashy River, Riddleport Harbor, and the marshy boneyard. The city does all it can to placate the wrath of the surely nature worshippers, with coins and token offerings to Gazre and other natural faiths. Despite their distaste for the city, Druids often come to the coast near Riddleports to commune with the waves and the creatures of the ocean. Many predict that it's only a matter of time before the fury of nature consumes the exploitative city. But some Druids take a less damning approach to their dealings with the city. As such, several Druids take up residence near the city docks, hoping to minimize the city's impact on the nearby bay, while others even join the crew of ships, offering their unique abilities over the elements for a chance to experience the open ocean. Aside from those Druids interested in the waves and forests farther inland, some Hermetic Druids make their homes deep within the Calphaics, which remember is the Calphaic Mountains, Among the rocks and beasts of the mountains, these hard-souled nature worshippers find a rugged kind of spirituality. Yet some of these pious explorers seek to connect not with the boulders and mountain summits, but with the very depths of the earth, delving into the endless tunnels that thread their way to the heart of the Caliphates, and, some say, far beyond. So, kind of a reason to have a druid or a hunter or, whatever, that would be interested in delving to the Underdark. Which I suppose, I don't know, because again, I haven't played this. That's what happened. We might read that later on. But from what I'm reading so far, Second Darkness and going deep underground, I think of the Underdark. Which I forget if it's called something else in Pathfinder, where the Drow live. Fighters. Find them everywhere. Enough said. Fighters. Riddleport's need for those with strong arms and sharp weapons never declines. Even as the city slowly sides toward legitimacy, although mercenaries and raiders can always find work on any number of pirate ships, caravans, and trading vessels, most of the city's martial-minded residents take jobs protecting the stakes of the city's numerous crime bosses. Whether as bouncers, toughs, hitmen, or racketeers, experienced and well-feared fighters never lack for work among the gangs of the city's extensive underworld. Particularly bloodthirsty, or brutal fighters, can also find work brawling and splitting skulls exclusively among the city's several outlets for blood sport, primarily the Zincher's Arena, where crowds pay for a gory display on a nightly basis. Yet, for all the grim and nefarious work opportunities the city offers, those warriors who prefer not to be tied directly to any of Riddleport's several obviously criminal enterprises have options as well. Numerous skilled fighters find an air of questionable legitimacy among mercenaries that serve as the city's gendarmes. I wonder if that's like some type of hired guard, or I'll have to look up what the word means. Although not wholly noble as an organization, many of these keepers of Riddleport's few laws and relative peace actually do strive to aid the people of the city. So, yeah. Like I said, you can find fighters anywhere. So you don't have to have a lot of reason to play as a fighter, as any race, or come from any particular place to do so. And it looks like a gendarme, so it's pronounced gendarme, is an armed police officer in France and other French-speaking countries, or a rock pinnacle of a mountain and occupying and blocking an array. So, yeah, I'm going to say it's like a guard, which I guess I was not aware, but I was thinking the Shawanti sound kind of French when you say quoi. So, yeah, those guardsmen. Forward on here, one of my favorite classes to play, and in fact, my first major character, named Jean Moxie, made it to level 17 monk before that campaign actually ended up ending. So, near and dear to my heart, one of the classes I played the very longest. Specifically, I played the Flowing Monk archetype because it's not good, but it's kind of cool thematically. Which is like, you're not fighting with your fists, you're just kind of deflecting stuff and tripping people, and yeah. So, monks. While hardly a spot to find enlightenment and spiritual wholeness, Riddleport is a place where both martial abilities and deception are valued to commodities. As such, the skills of those who are most deadly when unarmed, and whose appearances disguise their prowess, are held in high esteem. Although few who hone their physical skills seek worldly comforts, those who do can find great respect and endless work serving the city's various crime bosses. The crowds at Zincher's Arena also delight in rare displays of martial arts, and therefore, such practitioners command high prices for such exhibitions. In some underground arenas and fighting clubs, and elegant brawlers and hulking boxers learn techniques similar to those of foreign monks, cultivating bare-fisted styles, less artful, but no less devastating. Aside from the rare, well-trained Shawanti brawler or wandering ascetic, few Riddleport locals adopt the path of the monk. Rather, most such martial masters travel to the city from afar, either passing through as they seek new experiences to test their skills, or in search of rivals to hone their abilities. Thus, it's not unheard of to find representatives of the whirling masters of Thuvia and the stone-footed acrobatics of Kadira, or the silent llamas of the East exploring Riddleport's docks. But they're saying, not going to find a lot of monks, but if you want to play one, you can. Basically. And again, when you have similar classes, these very wizened but seeking enlightenment kind of characters, you would expect the same thing. You can play them. They're not necessarily from every. More likely, if you're playing a monk, you're a character who is passing through and caught up in something. Paladins, the lawful of the lawful. Awful. Paladins. Although none of Riddleport's prominent faiths support paladins among their ranks, one occasionally encounters such valorous warriors amid the city's bustling crowds. Some holy warriors take it as a divine challenge to bring the word of their deity to the irreverent, especially those clustered in cities of sin like Riddleport. Occasionally, wandering paladins of Iamade and Abadar come to the city with hopes of wresting a few souls from the darkness and combating the wickedness rampant in the city. But most end up departing in frustration. More than one such holy warrior has disappeared in Riddleport, as crusades against the city's potent crime lords rarely last long or end well. Paladins of Aristel or Sarenrae tend to have slightly more success in the city, taking a lighter approach and ingraining themselves among the people by providing education and healing to the frontier city. Also, paladins of other faiths sometimes pass through the city of Ciphers, hoping to cleanse the city by ridding the still dangerous countryside of savages and monstrous threats. In doing so, most hope to pave the way for more decent folk to come to the region and change the city over time. I think when you think about paladins, you can think about inquisitors the same way and a few other of that type. Basically, because the Church of Desna and the Church of someone like Caden Kalian don't really support paladins as much. Like if you're a paladin in one of those churches, you are doing it on your own. The church is not really supporting you so much. But from other faiths, you might be passing through. So kind of the same thing as a cleric in that sense. Like you may be coming to the city as your character to proselytize, or maybe your group's just traveling through and you're trying to just deal with them. The smart thing generally to do with these types of characters when you want to play a proselytizing character, as a Christian in real life, you see, like, it's easy to be annoying when you try to share your faith as opposed to being helpful. And it's easy to fall in that same trend as a character, I think, sometimes. So the more pertinent thing to do maybe is not to try to convince every NPC that they're a sinful, good-for-nothing heathen, but rather leave that RP within your party and try to display through your merits and your good standing and how you follow your deity the error of their ways, and then through them others, maybe as a character thing. But it is easy to take the cleric or paladin or whatever else faith a little too far, and then on the other end of the spectrum, it is easy to be a paladin and then never mention that you serve Abadar, and past that you know nothing about him, and your paladin will never mention him because you just do your own thing. And most DMs probably won't say anything to you a lot of the time, but it is fun to try to learn how to do that in the correct way. Difficult, but fun. Rangers. As one of the northernmost true cities encountered before entering the savage lands of the Lenorm Kings and the wilderness beyond, Riddleport is a true frontier town. As such, numerous skilled hunters, trackers, and explorers make their home in and around the city, ever ready for the next expedition. In the nearby wilds, hunters patrol the mountains in search of exotic beasts that prey upon farms along the Velashu River, such as wolves, fire-pelt cougars, harpies, and even the occasional rock or hill giant. Within the city, some rangers take sail aboard the local ships, and more than one shark hunter or killer of sea monsters such as aberrant reef claws or magical beasts like devilfish live in trophy halls near the city's wharves. Those with swift mounts make fine livings as couriers within the city between Riddleport and its holdings in Roderick Cove. Alternatively, hunters of men find endless outlets for their talents as hitmen for the city's endless criminal dealings. Recently, several local rangers have taken to exploring the vast cave systems below the Calphaic Mountains. Those who survive such dangerous expeditions sometimes return with strange fungi and evidence of bizarre pale-skinned beast. So, yeah, rangers are always a very cool thematic class. Just a rugged survivor of nature and having a reason to explore these cave systems into the Calphaic Mountains, whether it be an uncle you're learning from went missing below ground, whatever. It seems obvious as I'm reading through this Calphaic Mountains and the cave system below them going to be a major part of this. So preparing a character who has dark vision could be moderately good. And I guess along with rangers, kind of read the same thing again for the similar classes. I would almost count investigators along the same line as rangers, or instead of with the druids, you can place the hunters with them, or that type of thing. Those who would survive in nature and investigate and hunt and study their targets and their foes could all suit well with that introduction. Rogues. Need I say more? In a city of scoundrels, the quick-witted flourish, rogues of every variety and specialty find ample use for their skills, serving the city's various crime bosses, from pickpockets and second-story men to con artists and smugglers. Nearly every racket has its possibilities and place in Riddleport, and it's not uncommon to find the most skilled scoundrels involved in multiple schemes at the same time. Those rogues, adverse to theft and deadly dealings, often make their way as gamblers, merchants, prostitutes, private investigators, and even among the city's gendarme, which is the city's guard again. Aside from those crooks in the direct employ of Riddleport's crime bosses, several other fledgling gangs and lone thieves seek to make a name for themselves in the city of Ciphers. Groups of Scarny, occasionally blow into the city, running con games and quick rackets before heading back out on the road. And while crime bosses control many of the criminal enterprises in the city, most hold little sway outside the port's walls, and thus wandering brigands and roadside thieves come from all of Varissia to pawn their pilfered wares. I almost immediately get the idea of a lone thief who is trying to build a name for himself, who finds a party of individuals he thinks he can take advantage of and slowly builds a relationship with before creating his own crime family. And again, here, I think you can consider investigators, brawlers, all kind of the same thing as rogues here. Any baby rogue class, alchemist probably falls in there as well. And then we come to our magical arcane variants, the sorcerer and the wizard. And Remember, again, the same thing. When we read through these, you can certainly think of any of the shamans, the same with the sorcerers, or perhaps I forget what they're called. Alchemists are obviously a wizard. Part of a. They have some classes that fall out of wizard, or are kind of studied the same way. They can learn from wizard spellbooks, so they fall in there. What's the? I can't think of the class I'm trying to think of. It starts with an A. It's a magical class where it's like the magical fighter. Anyway, regardless, all of these will probably fall in the same way as the sorcerers and wizards. So if they're spontaneous arcane, think sorcerers. If they're prepared arcane, think wizards. Many magic users feel a special connection to the massive ancient monuments that mark Varisian's landscape, with few feeling such lures more fundamentally than sorcerers. In a land that seems to be suffused with magical wonders, such spellcasters often seek to learn more of the mysteries of their own blood and improve upon their innate talents. Many sorcerers join the ranks of the Order of Cyphers, some even claiming evidence of ancestries relating them to the land's lost civilizations. Others use their magical skills for more direct monetary gain, aiding criminals, performing their own magic-aided cons, or participating in an occupational spell duel in Zincher's arena. Wizards, on the other hand, obsessed with the secrets of the infamous monuments, wizards have flocked to Varisia for decades, hoping to discover ancient magic and arcane secrets amid the enigmatic monoliths. At the vanguard of research exploring these gigantic artifacts, the Order of Cyphers, a group of scholars with a shared obsession, makes its home in Riddleport. Growing and influenced by the year, these cipher mages study Varisian monuments, particularly Riddleport's enigmatic Cipher Gate, in an inexhaustive detail. Although the Order exists to share discoveries and research, many cipher mages prove dangerously competitive, keeping their findings from one another and even sabotaging the inquiries of their peers. Cipher mages are not alone in Riddleport, though. The skills of talented magic users go far in both trade and criminal enterprise. Some wizards make tidy profits selling simple scrolls and potions, especially of spells that prove particularly useful at sea. Others join in the ranks of the city's underworld elite, using divination and illusion, aiding rival criminal bosses in spying and misleading one another. Several of the city's better-funded gambling dens also keep house wizards on staff, using their magic to watch for cheaters. Aboard the ships of pirates and privateers, ship wizards are also highly respected and paid, their skills proving invaluable in the crippling vessels of enemies and defending against any number of sea-spawn threats. And that is the classes as displayed in the player's guide here. Now, again, as you consider, a large number of classes and archetypes have been added since then. So, if you find one that doesn't quite fit, just relate it to any one of these, and you can pretty well adapt it, as we looked at there. Now we run into the character face, of which, if you've been playing the game, a majority of these will be very familiar to you. So I'm gonna go through the basic traits, but I'm not gonna really read through each of them, because, like, if we're playing the game, I might make a video eventually on how different types of traits work and what exactly they mean. But the basic thing you need to know about traits is when you create a character, you get 2 traits. At this point, I guess they didn't have very set rules about this, because it asks your GM how many traits you can select. But like it says, in most cases you should gain 2 traits, which is effectively a bonus feat. Now, there are optional systems like the drawback system, which you can take a drawback for your character that makes your character kind of weaker but more personalized, which gives you an additional trait. often. So, and I usually make characters this way. So often you'll have 3 traits and 1 drawback. For traits, you have a number of types of traits, which includes racial traits, regional traits, religious traits, combat traits, faith traits, magic traits, social traits, and so on. And when you choose, say, a reactionary, probably the most chosen trait in the game, you get a +2 trait bonus to initiative. When you choose reactionary as a combat trait, you can't take a second combat trait unless you take the extra traits feat, which gives you 2 additional traits, in which case you can pick up traits of the same type. But aside from that purpose, and you always have to ask your GM about that as well, you can only take 1 combat trait, 1 faith trait, 1 magic trait, and so on. And there are way more that's going to be presented here. But, I mean, a lot of them presented here are things that are still good and stick out, and depending on your character, tend to be quite good. So, aside from that with traits, when you start an adventure path, generally one of the traits you have to take is a campaign trait, which once we get down here, we will look at. And campaign traits actually give you some pertinent lore for your character background and give you some usually better effects than a traditional trait. So let's look through just some of the scant reading up here. But then we'll skip over quite a bit of this because I've explained about it in minute detail. Feel free. This is a free PDF. If you look up Pathfinder Second Darkness Player's Guide, it'll come right up as a PDF that you can download for free, and you can look over this section a little bit more closely. But yeah, we won't look over this section too much. So, playing an adventure path is a different experience than playing a one-shot adventure. An adventure path presents a long, ongoing campaign, but unlike a custom-created campaign built by a specific GM for a group of players whose taste and proclivities in character creation are known quantities, we don't know what kind of choices your player prefers when building their characters. As a result, one of the driving philosophies of crafting an adventure path is to include a section for all 11 of the core classes so that no one feels left out by the game. But what about a less tangible element of the game? If you're rolling a new character for a homebrew campaign, you can hopefully trust your GM to tailor the campaign to include your character and his history and personality. For an adventure path, though, how's a player to know what choices or background might dovetail into the predetermined story arc of the campaign he's about to spend several months playing? More like years. I don't play that often, I guess. Once a week. Without spoiling key components of the adventure's plot line. That's the question the Adventure Path Player's Guide have attempted to address. And all the player's guides, including this one, we attempt to provide not only gazetters of the region in which the campaign begins, but also a spoiler-free discussion of what choices might be best to make when crafting a dwarf, an elf, a sorcerer, a ranger, or so on. Yet there's another tool that's been evolving over the past year as well, the character trait. The first incarnation of this new element to your character appeared in the Rise of the Ruin Lord's Player Guide, disguised as 6 new feats that your character could take. We recommend the GM allow the player to pick one of these 6 feats as a bonus feat. These new feats were more than just an additional tricks and power, though. They were crafted to infuse newly created characters with built-in links to the then brand new realm of Erissia. In the Curse of the Crimson Throne Player Guide, we abandoned the bonus feat model and instead came up with several traits which new characters could pick and choose. Each trait gained one of 2 relatively minor bonuses, but the majority of each trait consisted in the flavor and background information intended to prime your new character from the start of the campaign. And that brings us here, to the Second Darkness Player's Guide, and finally the solidified character trait mechanic. Character trait design philosophy. At its core, a character trait is approximately equal in power to half a feat. In fact, at one point, we considered calling them half feats, but abandoned the idea because we realized it implied a point system that didn't really exist. There would be no such thing, as example, as a double feat. Yet a character trait isn't just another kind of power you could add onto your character. Now, for the double feat thing, I would argue there are some story feats you can take and then accomplish, which are kind of a double feat. Anyway, it's a way to quantify and encourage building the character background that fits into your world of Golarion. Think of the character traits as story seeds for your background. After you pick your 2 traits, you'll have a point of inspiration for which to build your personality and history. Alternatively, you've already got a background in your head and written down for your character. You can view picking traits as a way to quantify that background, just as picking a race and class and ability score quantifies his strengths and weaknesses. One more thing. Character traits are for PCs. If you want an NPC to have traits, the NPC will need to buy them with additional traits feat. Player characters are special. They're the stars of the game, after all. And if they have an advantage over the NPCs of the world in this way, that kind of makes sense. The pre-generated characters presented in the Pathfinder and the modules will not have bonus traits selected for them. We're leaving those choices to you if you wish to use one of them as a PC. Many traits grant new types of bonuses. A trait bonus do not stack, and they're intended to give you a slight edge over non-PCs of the world. Not a secretive backdoor way to focus all your traits on one type of bonus that seems an unseemly advantage over the rules. It's certainly possible, for example, somewhere down the line, a courageous trait might be on the list of dwarf racial traits, but just because the traits on the dwarf racial trait list and the basic combat traits list doesn't mean you have to be more brave if you choose both than if you choose only one. We talked about gaining traits. You get those at character creation. You get 2 of them. If you take a drawback, you get 3. We talked about the types of traits. We'll expand on this just slightly. So, restrictions on trait selection. There are a few rules governing trait selection. To begin with, your GM controls how many bonus traits you get. The default assumption is 2. When selecting traits, you may not select more than 1 from the same list of traits, and certain types of traits may have additional requirements, as detailed in the section above. Remember also that traits are intended as a model event to model events that were formative in your character's development, either before you became an adventurer, or in the case of additional traits gained via the additional traits feat, events that happened while adventuring. Even if you become a hermit and abandon society, you'll still retain your legacy of growing up as an aristocrat if you took a social trait. The one exception to this is religious traits. Since these traits require continued faith to a specific deity, you can indeed lose benefits of those traits if you switch religions. In this case, consult your GM for your options. He may simply rule that you lose that trait, or he might allow you to pick a new religion trait tied to your new deity. Another option is that you abandon a religion, you lose the associated religious trait until you gain an experience level, at which point you may replace the lost religious trait with a basic faith trait. So, just some cool things there. Some basic combat traits to point out here. Anatomist, always really good. If you're trying to do some type of crit fishing build. Reactionary, never bad at all. The killer, okay. Dirty fighter's pretty good. I'm trying to think. I don't usually use most of these other ones. I've never really used most of those other ones. Birthmarks, often pretty good. Ease of faith, not bad at all. Indomitable faith, not bad. Dangerously curious, use that a few times. Hedge magician's not bad if you're gonna be I was going to say, I don't think that this Hedge Magician's changed since this, so don't read that. But Magical Talent or Lineage, both pretty good. Magical Knack's pretty good. Social Traits Adopted, S tier. There's so many good racial traits that you can pick up. Totally worth looking at. Charming, not bad at all. If you actually have a leadership, allowed in your game. Natural born leader, amazing. Rich parents. I have friends who really like to take it. I think it's awful. You give them a trait for 900 gold. You give them half a feat for 900 gold. I mean, it's like good in the early game, but I mean, once you get past that point, it's just you wasted a trait. But coming into the campaign traits. Campaign traits are tailored to a specific adventure path and give your character a built-in reason to begin the first adventure in the new campaign. Some campaign traits also grant teamwork benefits if you choose to begin a campaign with your character having pre-existing relationships with another PC. You'll notice right away that campaign traits assume a lot more about your character's backstory than basic traits do, and that those assumptions are mostly about very recent events in your history rather than formative childhood events. You have a certain amount of leeway in adjusting or changing a campaign trait expected backstory once you've selected a trait that fits right for you. But make sure you get your GM's approval before you run with a modified backstory. All of the following traits revolve around one or two current events in the city of Riddleport. The first is the manifestation of the Blot, a strange and ominous shadow in the sky. Looks nothing so much as a cloud of darkness. The Blot captured the interest of Riddleport citizens when it first manifested, but that was months ago. Now that the strange cloud hasn't done anything particularly dramatic for so long, most folks have grown accustomed to it. Most, but not all, such as the Order of Cyphers. They remain concerned about the strange cloud and worry that it may be the harbinger of something worse. The other event is the gambling tournament called the Cheat the Devil and Take His Gold, held at the recently opened Gold Goblin Gambling Hall. Talk of the tourney has spread throughout the town of Riddleport and has even reached some taverns in the cities as far as Magnamar or Corvosa. Excitement for the tournament has been building for a month, and now the day is finally here. People from all over are flocking to take part. What a mistake in the Pathfinder world. You flock to an event and something terrible is going to happen. Anyway, the somewhat restrictive entrance fee ironically makes it not impossible for many of Riddleport's own citizens to attend, but in the case of each PC who takes the Second Darkness campaign trait, that 1 GP entrance fee has been paid, either by an interested party or by yourself. This expense does not come from your starting cash. And so, first we have Fools for Friends. You don't think of yourself as a gambler. In fact, you rather detest the whole thing. Unfortunately, one or more of your friends, pick one or more of the other player characters, doesn't think so. And you've recently learned that friend or friends have decided to go to the Gold Goblin's Cheat the Devil and Take His Gold tournament, which pretty much means you have to go as well, since if no one's there to watch out for them, they'll lose all their money and respect. Again, sometimes it's hard being the responsible one. Your devotion to your friendship, even when said friends seem at times to be trying to test that devotion, is a point of pride to you. Whenever you take the aid another action to help an ally, whenever an ally aids you in this manner, a successful check grants an additional +1 trait bonus to the check for which the aid is being rendered. Additionally, as long as one of your friends is within 30 feet, you gain a +1 trait bonus on all saving throws against charm and compulsion effects. It's not bad at all. The aid another, it can be really good, especially in the early game, but the saves against charms and compulsion, pretty good. Into enemy territory. The shadow in the sky is visible from all around Riddleport, not just in town. It's certainly come to the attention of several druids, rangers, and other rural folk who dwell in nearby mountains, forests, and swamps. Among them, yourself. You've consulted with several seers and harrowers, and may even have performed some simple auguries yourself, and all the signs point the same way. Something or someone in Riddleport is connected to the Blot, and it means bad news for the region. You've avoided the sleazy, dirty town for most of your life, traveling there only when absolutely necessary. Although you don't relish the prospect of going there now, you see little other choice, especially if one of your superiors is ordering you to go investigate. Fortunately, an eccentric friend of yours, pick another player character, is in town, and you've heard that this friend will be taking part in some gambling thing at a place known as the Gold Goblin. Your friend's always had better luck interacting with city folk, and you've decided to accompany your friend to the gambling tournament, and plan on letting him find a safe place for you to stay while you're in town. Your long life, or self-sustenance, has toughened you and made you a little more resistant to hardship. In any event, pick one of the 3 categories of saving throw, and you gain a +1 trait bonus on all saving throws of that type. Not bad. Looking for work? Although out of work, you aren't particularly keen on the prospect of gambling away your last remaining coin simply for a chance at riches. That said, if the Gold Goblin's fortunes reverse after this big gambling tournament, you're relatively certain its owner, Saul Van Kaskirken, will be needing to hire some new staff members. You secured payment for the tournament and intend on attending mostly to check the place out, to decide if it's a place you want to work, either as a bouncer, bartender, a croupier, server, entertainer, spotter, or cook, and hopefully get a chance to catch Saul's eye and make an impression. You've long worked on honing your skills and are quite accomplished and certain that you have something to offer. Pick one of the following skills: bluff, craft, which we never have to worry about, diplomacy, intimidate, perform, profession, gambler, or spot, which is perception. And you get a +1 trait bonus on that skill, and it's considered a class skill for you. So one of the things to look out for, because these were made not exclusively for Pathfinder, is always you see skills like spot or some of these other things that are a little different. And in modern Pathfinder, all perform skills, all profession skills, and craft skills really too, are pretty much always class skills for everything. So there's no point in trying to pick those things. But getting a +1 in them might be something you want to do. Probably not, but up to you. Optimistic Gambler, trait number 4. You've always seemed to have trouble keeping money. Worse, you always seem to have debts looming over your head. When you heard about the cheat the devil and take his gold gambling tournament, you felt it in your gut that your luck was about to change. You've always been optimistic. In fact, even though right now is one of the rare times where you don't owe anyone money, as you just paid off a recent loan from the local moneylender, Lima Sneed. You know that that'll change soon enough. Better start amassing money now, when you're the one of those rare windfall times. You've set aside a gold coin for the entrance fee and look forward to making it big. You feel it in your bones. This time's going to be the big one. Your boundless optimism, even in the face of crushing situations, has always bolstered your spirit. Effects that grant a morale bonus persist 1d4 rounds longer than they would normally result, which is crazy if you play something like a barbarian, because rage is a morale bonus. So that's cool. Actually, you can rage cycle pretty effectively with that. Rage for 1 round. On average, you're going to roll a 2 or a 3, which means even though you go fatigued for 2 rounds, it totally makes up for it, and you have the extra. So, that's a really cool bonus. Number 5, researching the Blot. You may or may not be seeking membership in Riddleport's most prestigious magical guild, the Order of Cyphers. But you certainly have heard their call for aid in determining the nature of the strange shadow in the sky over Riddleport. You arrived in the town several days ago and had some issues with security and safety at several inns before you finally settled on the Gold Goblin. You've been staying here as a guest for several days now, and the owner, Saul Van Kaskirken, seems to be a nice guy. He's even given you a pass to attend the gambling tournament he's about to throw. You're not sure how into gambling you'll be, but perhaps there'll be some visitors from out of town you can talk to about the strange shadow in the sky. At the very least, you're hoping someone in the tourney will be into magic. There's not really enough folk in this town as we seem to be interested in magic. Your interest in magic dates back quite far, and as a result, you developed a knack for identifying comical magical items at a glance. You can use spellcraft to identify magical items in the same way you can use spellcraft to identify a potion. The DC to identify a magical item is 20 plus the item's catch level. That is hopefully your GM will change that, because that's the worst thing I've ever read. So this was obviously a trait that was made before Pathfinder came into its own in terms of how traits worked and stuff. I'm assuming this has definitely been reworked since then, because you can already use spellcraft to identify magical items so long as you use Detect Magic on them first. And the DC to identify an item is only 15 plus the item's caster level. So this actually makes you worse at doing what you normally would do. So I might give you a +2 to identify magic items or something, but even that would be terrible. Yeah, work with your GM on that if you want that backstory, because that's awful. That's awful. Not good at all. Cool backstory, though. Scouting for friends. Sorry, not friends. Fiends. Scouting for fiends. A very different backstory trait. You belong to an organization, most likely a religion, that has definite views on the menace posed by the lower planes. The willfulness with which the city of Corvosa, they even allow a temple of Asmodeus to operate in broad daylight, tolerates infernal influences, is to you and your organization the greatest symbol of what's wrong with civilization today. Darn you, kids. And now, in Riddleport, there's news that a gambling tournament is using devils and hell as an idle decoration. And it's likely this is just an example of poor taste, but there's a certain chance something sinister may be lurking beneath the going on at the Golden Goblin. You've been contacted by your organization, or may have decided on your own, to travel to Riddleport, if you don't live there already, and attend the tournament under the guise of a patron. Keep an eye on things there. Even after the tournament's over, if you can, get a job working for the owner. Demons and devils can be subtle, and it would take weeks or even months to find proof of their involvement. Your near-obsessive hatred for all things fiendish grants you a +1 trait bonus on all attack rolls made against foes you know to be evil outsiders. So that's kind of a really... I actually like that a lot. Just like the most well-meaning like cleric or paladin who ends up to try to root out the demons and devils accidentally becomes a mob boss eventually, just working his way up the ladder. It's like one of these days these devils and demons are gonna show up. I know it. So yeah, that's where we're gonna stop this one for today. This is the player's guide, and as well as the introduction of the map and all those things, but mainly the player's guide, as you would see for any other adventure path. Additionally, if you would like me to cover the rest on a read-through, in which we look at Welcome to Riddleport, look at the Prestige class, the Liberator, some of the Caden Kellyan's lore and backstory, looking at some Cypher Mage things, some treasures that are presented in this for Spelunkers. Lavender, Lil. Oh, she's a Tiefling. That's interesting. Any of these things that, that you would like to look at, just leave a comment. Give me some... I mean, if anyone expresses any interest in that being covered or read aloud, I would be happy to do so as a second video in connection with this one. But again, you can find this companion. All you have to do is go to Google and search up Pathfinder campaign, Second Darkness, Adventure Path, Player Companion, whatever. It's pretty easy to find. It'll be one of the first few links. It's a PDF, and you can look through and read these and reference these things. But I also understand that reading this much is not everyone's forte. Some people prefer the audiobook form, which is what I'm hoping to kind of imitate display here. So if you like this, do leave a like, maybe subscribe or leave a comment, anything that helps me to just kind of keep at it and keep going. My plan is over the course of the next so many months to cover the player companions or the adventure path player guides for every Pathfinder First Edition campaign in order, and then begin on the second edition player guides as well, looking at the Age of Ashes and what's the Extinction Curse, Thornwood Guards. There's quite a few. There's coming more now. The most recent one at the time of this recording, I believe, was the Strength of Thousands. Although there's another one which has been announced or maybe started to be released now. But I know the Strength of Thousands is the most recent one that's been completed. Eventually, we will go through and catch up and read through every one. If that's something that's interested you, again, leave a comment, leave a like, some encouragement. Yeah, anything helps. But thanks for watching, and have a great day.